know that virtual coaching has become more competitive than ever. NASM's got you covered with our virtual coaching course. NASM's virtual coaching course provides a complete solution to help you translate your services into a successful virtual platform. This course will give you the tools to build and operate a sustainable virtual business model. The formats may be different, but you're still delivering fitness training and effective behavioral coaching. That doesn't change even if you can't be in the same physical space as your clients. The truth is, this is the way to reach more clients and expand your reach and impact. There's never been a better time to carve out your very own virtual space, and NASM is here to help. Welcome to NASM's virtual coaching.
Hello and good day, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Random Fit Show, powered by NASM. I am Ken Miller, and I'm joined here by Miss Wendy Batts. How are you, Wendy?
I am fantastic. How are you?
Good. You look fantastic. Looks like
thanks.
it's a nice, bright, sunny day outside there.
It is a little chilly, but but it's the sun's out, no clouds in the sky, so it's a good day.
We'll take it. We'll take
exactly.
it. All right. So today on Random Fit, we're going to talk a little bit about fitness in fashion, or fashion in fitness. So I gotta say, it's not fashion isn't my strong suit, so I'm gonna have to tee off of you when it comes to.
We're in trouble.
Yeah. Well, you got that stylish camo thing going on there, so that's good. And I just gotta, if it zips up and if I'm warm, I'm good with it. And yeah, not a whole lot of color or pattern diversity on my end. But when it comes to fashion and fitness, the thing about, when we talked about this earlier, when it comes to fashion, it's like what you're saying. It's like, I'm wearing something that's comfortable, but and it's got to be functional. But when we look at fashion and how it's evolved over the decades, when I think about fashion and fitness, it's one of those things where you bring up a certain item of clothing, you automatically go to that era, right? So when you think either a name or something like, if someone says biker shorts, what do you think of?
Oh gosh, I mean, a certain person or just event. I mean,
yeah, exactly. But something jumps out at you, right? So when you think biker shorts, you think, okay, I remember back in the day when I used to, I don't know what made me put those things on, but everybody else is doing it, so why not?
That's right. That's right. I mean, I was excited about this because, when we started talking about it, it was more not just about where we started and where we are today, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's really more of like, there's iconic people to me that, like, when you talk about certain people in the industry, it's like, you know what, they were the leader in fashion at that time, which when we start talking truly about the history of, starting all the way back into, like early 1900s. I mean, even there's someone we're going to talk about that was in 1894. It's amazing to see what people wore and got away with to where we are today, wearing it basically as, everyday clothes, whether they go to the gym or not. So
right, exactly. So when you go back to 1894 and you think about, fitness and exercise, if you will, back in the day when it came to exercise, everything was, it was about bodybuilding a lot of times. And it was about, when we talk about bodybuilding, you can't talk about bodybuilding without talking about Eugene Sandow.
Yes.
And the reason why he is so iconic when it comes to the sport of bodybuilding is because of his symmetry and his physique and how proportional his body was relative to the Greeks and the Romans. And I know we'll get back into that a little bit. But when you think about, okay, what people considered to be ideal and what was perfect from a body standpoint, he was one who really shaped his body for the specific purpose of looking a specific way. And to your point, you take an icon like him, and you can't help but look, okay, well, what did a guy like that wear when he was exercising, right? So when we talk again fashion, he's got to be one of the first ones to look at when it comes to, okay, what do you wear when you do these things, when you're active like that?
Oh, exactly. Well, and again, to your point, when we think of him as, kind of the Mr. Olympia, because again, that's the trophy. It's the the standout trophy is what they receive today when you win Mr. Olympia, which is such an unbelievable thing. And that didn't even start till 1977. So again, you got to think we're talking 1894, that time frame. And did you know that he was actually like more of a model, and that's why he built his physique a very certain way, built after the Romans as well as the Greeks, and he was looking to be the Grecian ideal, if you will. That's kind of what he was kind of termed as. And again, did a ton of like unbelievable things in trying to get competition going. And so I think we can't not start off without talking about him, because again, we owe a lot of the bodybuilding, the physique, and again, making sure that everything is proportional in size on each side. So symmetry, as you said, we definitely have to talk about that. But I mean, even if we go now to, let's say, like 1968, if we move from that, and then I know we're taking kind of a huge jump, but if we talked about every single year up until where we are, we would be here for multiple hours. But one of the things that kind of stood out to me was Tommy Smith. And Tommy Smith was an Olympic athlete, and he was one of the very first people, or the team, if you will, were the very first people that wore a tracksuit. And when you think about that, that was in 1968. And, when you're thinking about that, it became popular because of him. But, it doesn't seem like that long ago, but people still wear tracksuits today, and that was like such the most like amazing time. Like, what is he wearing? And everyone was asking all these questions. And so to me, when you think about tracksuits, you got to think about Tommy Smith. And I know that you found some research on him. He was a sprinter. Right?
Yeah. And back in the 68 Olympics, that's where he was the first to break the 20-second mark for the 200. So even back then, I mean, he not just as a fashion icon or even a trailblazer when it came to what people wore at the time that were, athletically inclined, but he was impressive because he was, from what I understand, he was in two Olympics as a sprinter. So as that goes, with tracksuits being the theme here, that is one of the choices of apparel that's lasted over the decades. So you're getting from late 60s, 70s, and of course, when it comes to music, especially hip hop rap music, you can't get away from thinking tracksuits. And
Run
DMC, LL Cool J, they all, you throw on a Kango hat, you're good to go. But hey, I mean, I know I've had my share of tracksuits back in the day because, of course, you had to have the top with the matching bottom, and of course,
absolutely.
Adidas was the maker of choice when it came to the tracksuit. So. Well, again, when you have a song called "My Adidas," you gotta go with
support
it.
the brand.
Yeah. So I know I couldn't run a 200 meter that fast, but I could wear the.
But it makes sense. I mean, when you think about that, we still call them tracksuits today. But you think about it, their tracksuits are worn before, like, we see them before at basketball games. People are putting on quote their tracksuit or their quote now what they're kind of termed more of a warm up suit. Yeah. But it's still like quote a tracksuit, and it became a tracksuit because it was first worn on a track. And so when you think of it that way, that name is still like carried on today. Like, granted, I don't call it a tracksuit anymore, but it technically is termed a tracksuit, even if you go and buy one tomorrow. So
right. So yeah, I mean, you can't, especially this time of year. I know that we're trying to keep this evergreen, but as we're getting deeper into the winter, I mean, that's one of those things where it's got to be a part of your your repertoire when it comes to, okay, if I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to be fashionable, or even just going out to the grocery store, something that's light and easy and still fashionable. The
Always.
tracksuit is ever present.
A-
Um,
And I mean, that brings us to, when you think about, that was in 68. And if you think about even all the way up to the late, late 70s, people were still wearing tracksuits. They were changing the
mhm,
fabric though. And I know
mhm,
one of the popular fabrics in the late 70s was velour. And of course, like for me, I was
right,
like, well, is velour the same thing as velvet? Which it's not. And I mean, again, that's how little I know about fashion. I'm like, it's got to be the same thing. But actually, when people are talking about velour, it's actually made of cotton, and people
right.
actually wore, think about this, going to the gym now, doing a hit workout in a velour tracksuit made of cotton. I mean, that's a little much, but that was kind
No
of the
way.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what people would wear at the
Right.
gym in the late 70s. And again, it was just one of those carryovers, and that, when one person wears it and they brand it and that is the thing to wear, then of course everyone else follows suit, because it's like, well, they want to be cool and they're going to the gym, and you know what, if they're wearing it, I should wear it. And that's kind
Yeah.
of still how it is today.
That's
So
fashion.
it's all fashion.
Yeah. So let's kind of get back into the 70s now. And when you can't talk about exercise without, or working out without talking about good old Mr. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh yeah.
And when we talk about 60s and 70s, it wasn't so much about aerobics just yet, but a lot of exercise and a lot of gym workouts were based on bodybuilding. So we talked about Mr. Eugene Sandow again. He's probably then again, and I missed that in researching um, early fitness fashion, because I thought he was a bodybuilder. I didn't realize that he was doing it for the purpose of being a model,
A
right?
model
So
for museums. Yep. And if you
yeah,
look him up, it's kind of crazy, because when you look him up and you start reading about him, like most of his pictures, he's laying there in these crazy poses with a
right.
leaf over his business. And it's like, okay, I need something. What did he work out in? Because I know he didn't work out in a leaf. So yeah. And it's basically like a singlet is what he was wearing at the time,
Mhm.
based on the pictures that I saw. But
Right.
good old Arnold, you want to tell us about what he was wearing?
Well, I mean, there's not much to it because if you watched Pumping Iron, I mean,
Mhm.
he's in a tank top and short cotton shorts, and as simple as you get something you can move, you can squat, and he's infamous for the not just looking the way he did, but the amount of strength that he had when he worked out. But for all the things that you do as a bodybuilder, especially in that era in the 70s, it's as simple as you have your short, basically you're just cotton shorts and a spaghetti. Would that be considered a
Spaghetti
spaghetti
strap.
strap? Something really thin. And I
Right.
just remember when I first, started getting interested in exercise. I mean, it was about the tank top and tank
Yep.
top and shorts. That's what you got. And when you're working out and you've got your workout partner, it's there's no one to impress when you're in the gym like that. I mean, your muscles spoke for themselves.
Yeah.
So
But and it makes
yeah.
sense though, because if you think about, like, Arnold or Dave Draper,
Hmm.
and you think about those guys, and again, we're talking now, what, mid to late 70s or so. I mean,
Hmm.
they were really focused so much on physique and making sure that
Yeah.
everything was, ideal, like, again, symmetrical. And so when you
Right.
had the little clothing on that they did, they were able to see, how their muscles popped when they were doing different types of poses, as well as,
Right.
working out and lifting weights and stuff. Plus, I mean, to your point, now you still see individuals, females now, but I mean, at the time, you still, right now, I even see males working out in the muscle tank
Hmm.
tops. And again, I mean, it gives you a lot of freedom to move. I mean, it was functional then, it's still functional now. But to your point, they were still made of cotton, and we've gotten away from that because, I mean, again, when you're drenched, I mean, that gets
Hmm.
really smelly, first and foremost, and second of
Yeah.
all, it gets
Yeah.
heavy. So
Right. I remember, and that's, and when I was first working, when I first got into the to the gym industry back in the early 90s, cotton was one of those things that, like, you gotta wash it. You just gotta wash it because it holds on to everything. I mean, I think we've all, those that work out in gyms and health clubs, we've all seen that guy that just, they wear a shirt and you're like, I know you wore that the last time I saw you. So so I
Yes.
can't let, I'm hoping that they, laundry was an everyday thing, but cotton is one of the things that's just, I mean, it's good when it's cool and you want to feel nice and cozy, but when it comes to working out, the thinner the better. Just because you got to move, and I'm one of those guys too that when I work out and I'm doing a total body routine, less material, because I just don't like how sleeves feel when you're doing overhead work or you're reaching and things just start moving around. So not for vanity's sake, it's more from a ease and
Sure.
comfort of movement is what I'm looking
You just
for.
want everyone to check you out. I know
Yeah, no.
how
I come
Oh,
in, a big beanie, cover up my face, and just work out. Just work out.
well, I mean, and when you think about that, that was in the 70s. But if we even take
Hmm.
a step back, I mean, we can't not talk about spandex, or
Yeah,
so the textile fabrication called lycra, if you will. But that was actually patented by DuPont in 1959, and they actually introduced the world to spandex, worn by, again, a French Olympic team. And so it's amazing how when people are coming out with new fabrics or the new, I don't want to call it a fad, but the new, outfit of the year, outfit of the decade, whatever it
yeah,
is, or the material, something new, that they would have it on such like a high level for everyone to see. Because I mean, everyone watched the Olympics, of course. And so I
right.
found that was really, really kind of amazing to find out a little bit more about spandex. And then, of course, that was in 59, but that fabric stayed around and it was the go-to fabric all the way up into the 80s. And so, you want to think that's been a long time, but, that's actually the same fabric that when you said that about bike shorts, I mean, I was going to say, well, because I've done research, I'm going to think it's spandex,
Yeah,
but it was everything from the spandex to, the unitards. And it really became so popular that, DuPont had a really hard time keeping up with the demand. And,
right.
I mean, that's why, and in all reality, that's why the unitard didn't really last that long. But spandex still remains the material
Hmm.
that is in most of the exercise clothing still. So
Right.
you know,
Now, yeah, and getting back to that, the French ski team of '68. I mean, you're changing materials now to where it's not just about covering and what you wear during exercise. It's now migrated more towards the function. What's it going to take for me to function the best I can with the least least amount of feeling cumbersome when it comes, especially with skiing, aerodynamics and all of those things that go into, okay, what's it going to take for me to get from here to down there the fastest possible. So the introduction of that form fitting uniform as they were skiing was a big shift, and for that to take place or to carry over into other activities like you're talking about aerobics and Jane Fonda and all of those things, where now everything's form fitting instead of the loose and baggy, or even like what we're talking about with David Draper and Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's not just minimal material to maximize movement or freedom of movement. Now you're talking going the other way. Let's get it as close to the body and as form fitting as possible, so that we're still covered, but we're not, things aren't, loose and draping as we move about. But when it comes to now looking at, okay, true athletics, that's where the change in material really affected, what they did for their sport. But of course, now, as you mentioned, it's carrying over into what you started to wear for just exercise and movement in general.
well, and think about this too. If you think, okay, 1959, DuPont says, okay, we're going to come out with this material, and if they do it on the ski team, think about, at that time it was kind of, you know, evolutionary, if you will, because of, if you think about aerodynamics, I mean, like to your point, now
Yep.
they don't have, the excess material, flapping in the wind. They're
Hmm.
trying to get low. They're trying to be as aerodynamic as possible to get down at the fastest time. So So, I mean, I think that it was very, to me, I was like, that totally makes sense. And if you look at what skiers wear today, again, very tight clothing, you know, I mean, they may have a jacket or something, but when they're skiing, their clothes are tight. Plus it does keep them warm too. So
yeah. So
makes sense.
yeah. So
Yeah.
the quality or the type of material also has now, of course, evolved to where now we can look at maintaining body temperature, not just as subject to the snow,
Yeah.
as the Winter Olympics would put you in.
But
But yeah, go ahead.
And I was going to say, you know, I mean, we keep talking about, you know, the ski teams, and we keep talking about, you know, that it's still an everyday, you know, exercise and workout material.
Mhm.
But, you know, one of the most amazing, you know, men of all time, especially in our industry, you know, again, otherwise known as the godfather of modern fitness, we can't not talk about Jack LaLanne. And he was actually known for wearing a bright red, you know, all red spandex. So that same material unitard.
Mhm.
And, you know, he was literally the first celebrity trainer that was out there. I mean, and, you know, I could talk about Jack LaLanne forever. I mean, you know, he literally was a household name, you know, all the way from, I think it was 1951 to, you know, 1985, he had his
Yeah.
show. And, you know,
Right.
we actually owe the, you know, the green juice, if you will. And,
You had the
you know,
juicer going. Nice.
yeah. And some of the cable machines and everything like that. I mean, he really was an amazing, amazing man. So I know, like, when we lost him in 2011, people were like, oh my gosh, you know, I mean, that's how we got jumping jacks. I mean, we got the jumping jack from Jack LaLanne. So
Yeah.
another little fun fact that,
Another little fun fact about Mr. Jack LaLanne. Yeah, and I mean he's such an icon in the fitness industry that, you know, one of the industry conference organizations, IDEA, has a IDEA Jack LaLanne Award. So those that have affected their community, the fitness industry, to where now you have it for personal trainers, group exercise, program directors. So different people are recognized for their contributions to the fitness industry in Jack LaLanne's name. So for all of the, and it's funny that when I looked at who won last year, I knew two of them personally. So Amy Thompson, who's now the vice president, I think, of IDEA, and then Brian Nunez, who's a local Bay Area facility owner, author. But just to give you an idea of what it takes now to hold that Jack LaLanne name and support it and give honor to it as far as the fitness industry goes. And that's exactly what Jack LaLanne did, for setting an example of how important it was to move and to keep moving and to keep the body vital when it comes to what we need to do to stay healthy. And I mean, and he showed it because he started off, a lot of people don't realize that Jack LaLanne just wasn't an exercise enthusiast. He was a bodybuilder to start, right? So if you saw his earlier pictures closer to the 1951, when he first hit the scene, he was a bodybuilder, and then of course started his TV show and was in everybody's living rooms now and showing people how to exercise. They're laying on the ground, they're using their chairs, they're getting up, and he's just basically doing calisthenics. Nothing that was too dependent on exercise equipment, which a lot of people have become dependent on exercise equipment, as we've discussed exercise equipment. But he was just showing it doesn't take all that much. And if you look at his videos, and this is one of the things that got me started looking online and watching YouTube and watching what he said, there was nothing complicated about movement and what he's been able to show people that they can do at home. So simple. The red outfit, it wouldn't be called a romper, was it? It's just
no, they called it a unitard.
A unitard. So that just that one
red
piece.
Spandex unitard.
Yeah. And that's what he wore. I mean, earlier on it was in black and white, so you really couldn't tell what color he was wearing. But over time, then when you had the Technicolor come in, then now you have a guy who's now iconic for what he wore with that red unitard. So yeah, Jack LaLanne. I mean, did you see those, like when he would celebrate his birthday, he would tow rowboats. He would swim and tow
Oh yeah.
these boats behind him, handcuffed. That's what that guy.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
never be able to do that.
no, I can barely do that. You give me,
I'm trying to swim from one side to the other and not die, let alone be handcuffed or with boats behind me. So
yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah,
truly an iconic and amazing man, especially in our industry. So we could not bring him up, because not just his fancy outfits, but I mean, truly someone that we owe a lot of our fitness. I mean, even think about this, because he was bringing in so many exercises that people could do at home that really does relate to what we do today, especially in our situation where people can't go to the gym. I mean, so, I mean, you got to think that started back in 1951. We're just kind of making a little more modern day and have a lot more science behind why we do what we do. But again, I would know we could talk about him forever, but if we have to think about what really came next, if we start thinking back again into 1970s, so again, we're still in the 70s. Why don't you, because I know this was like a jaw dropper to me, but why don't you tell us a little bit about the leotard?
The leotard. Well, never having owned my own leotard, just
whatever.
to put that
You
out
wear
there.
those every day.
Well, if it's a Friday or Saturday night, who knows? Who knows what my who knows where the night might take us. So, but when we talk about the leotard, the thing about the leotard is that it's actually named after somebody, right? So, I think it's Jule or Julie. I can't remember how it's pronounced, but Jule.
He's French, and
he's,
so I would.
Yeah, he's French. Jules. Oh, sorry. My apologies to any of our French listeners. Leotard.
That's why I had you do that.
I know. Thanks, Wendy, for the handoff. So again,
here for
my
you.
apologies if I've offended anybody from our French exercise community. But back in the day, just to help with movement, this guy was an acrobat. So to help him do all the acrobatic moves that he needed to do without impeding, materials or anything that's too thick, Jules Leotard, he designed this form tight fitting outfit so that he was able to do what he needed to do. But we bring that up because it started off as more as an acrobatic outfit or outfit designed for an acrobat such as himself. But now, as we got into the 70s, the leotard was one of those fashion iconic outfits that you think 70s exercise, you think about the leotard, and it was an acrobat, Julie Leotard, that was the one that started that outfit.
And just to mention, again, I know that we're probably butchering the name, but this was a man. And so for me, of course, when I think leotard, I'm obviously going to go ahead and jump into like kind of the next area. But I think of aerobics, I think of jazzercise. I think that's when it happened. And I think of the one and only Jane Fonda. And so I was like, well, she was the one that totally, started wearing this outfit. And that's when it became the big fad. But when I actually looked it up, I was like, wow, this was a man that was an acrobat that started, that actually brought the leotard to the forefront. And Jane Fonda took it and ran with it. And that was her, everyday outfit, especially when she was, doing all of her at-home videos. And, so when you think about that, you're talking about, the spandex tights and the leotards. And of course, Jane Fonda also had the little fashion belts, and, she would wear, like her leg warmers, and sometimes she would have the little wristbands and all that. And so, like her big look at this point in time was the featured leotards, the oversized sweatshirts, the leg warmers, but when you think of that, or I think of a leotard, you have to think Jane Fonda. And, when we were looking more information up about her, what I thought was awesome was when you look at how many videotapes she sold for people to do at home. So back in the day, VHS tapes. Now I know some of our listeners are probably like, what is that? It's the big box that you put in a VCR and you played it and you could watch it over and over. But I mean, she sold over 17 million copies of her at home workout videos. And, she really is truly accredited by making popular the concept of working out at home, but also working out for women in general, which again, I think is incredible because, not saying that women didn't work out, but it was just like, it was actually more and more women wanted to work out. They wanted to look like her and they could do it at home. So they could still, tend to the family and their only, their other obligations. And so again, I really like her and what she brought, because again, it wasn't just the bodybuilding and men. Now we're looking at, okay, we're bringing it in, and this is kind of the merge of men and women actually working out, trying to change their lifestyle and live a healthier life.
Right. And, you talk about and VHS tapes. I mean, so for our younger viewers, VHS, it wasn't, it was back in the day when it wasn't just, point and click and then press play. You either bought it, like Wendy said, or you had to put the tape into the player and you press play and you have to rewind. And when you rewound, you had to watch everything or you stopped and you have to rewind. And, and the phrase back in the day was be kind,
rewind.
Yes.
That's awesome. Yep.
Right.
But yeah.
So she did a lot for extra, like to your point. It's like, she got a lot. It was beyond just, okay, lifting to get big or for bodybuilding purposes, which was for men and even sports at the time when it came to exercise. Just to talk on that a little bit. A lot of athletes and different sports, they didn't like you lifting weights and working out because they thought it made you too bulky and inflexible and less athletic, right? So that was one of the things about exercise. I know a little bit of a tangent, but when it came to the females or the women environment, when it came to exercise, Jane Fonda was one of those that, again, a lot of who Jack LaLanne spoke to was just to women in general, but Jane Fonda was there to actually show what it was to be a healthy woman and the effects of exercise. And of course, when you're wearing that outfit that's nice and tight and form fitting, then you say if that's what she does and that's what she looks like, then that's what I got to do, which is how a lot of people sell fitness. It's basically how you look. And the leotard left nothing to hide, as a lot of form-fitting clothes do.
That's very true. That's very true. Yeah. So, but if we think about this, I mean, again, I could talk about Jane Fonda forever as well, because I mean, she's got, books and videos and, the stuff that she did for fitness. But, if we try to move on to some of the other sports and related, changes in sports, I mean, we cannot not talk about triathlons. And,
right.
And, the first person when I think about a triathlon, I think about is Mark Allen. And, he always wore his, what do they call it? The singlet, and they had shorts. But, did you know that in 1977, so this is 43 years ago, that's when they held the first Ironman race? So that's pretty crazy. So when you think about that, and the reason they held this race was there was a huge debate on, who was the toughest swimmers, cyclists, as well as runners. And so when you think about that, and you had to think about the different quote outfits and the changes, obviously you want to minimize the amount of time that it takes to change out of certain clothes and change your shoes and all that stuff. But, that actually was back in 1977. And so, I didn't realize that they had been going on that long.
Yeah. Well, I think, especially you and I were at that age where, as far as we can remember when it came to exercise, because 77, I was 6 or so years old. I mean, when it came to now starting to think about exercise, it had already been in existence. So it's one of those things that we could have said it started in 1950. We wouldn't know the difference because it just had been around for a while, as far as the ultimate endurance event. But yeah, when I've worked with triathletes for different reasons, whether it was reconditioning or getting over some aches and pains, it's one of those things where they always talk about the transitions. Transition from out of the water and onto the bike, and from the bike and onto the run. And if you're talking a full triathlon, I mean, and the level of competition, I mean, it's a matter of minutes, if not seconds, between you and the person that's behind you. So anything that you can do to minimize that transition time, which is where, that one piece, that one, it's thin enough that you can swim in it, right? And then it's light enough, or has enough, enough of the right quality, so that once you get out of the water and then onto the bike, that water isn't just sitting on you while you're riding the bike, but it's also got to be functional enough that now you can get off of the bike and run a full marathon. Yeah, I still can't get past, it's like,
I'm with you.
You're gonna swim a couple miles, you're gonna run this, you're gonna bike a century, and then you're gonna run a marathon. It's like, how are you? But anything, if that's what you got to wear for hours on end, I mean, it's got to be comfortable. I mean, as comfortable it can be when you're doing that. And so I'm sure the right material to make sure that it wicks, or just kind of pulls moisture away from the body. Yeah, so for the triathletes that I've had a chance to work, they say that uniform, that unitard is one of the most important investments that you can make on top of, the bike that you have, your bike and your shoes, and that and a pair of goggles. But what you're going to wear for the time it takes you to start and go through all three of those events and finish, the biggest, most effective piece of equipment you have is what you're going to wear.
Well, yeah. And I mean, and again, I found it fascinating that, first Ironman was in 77. And it wasn't even until like mid 80s before they even did the, like, kind of the one outfit fits all, if you will. So, I mean, just think about this. They would get out of the water. They would completely change out of their swimsuit to put on, the next, whatever it is that they were going to wear. And then when they got off, of the bike, then they had to change out their bike shorts and their shirt, and then now put on whatever they wanted to run in. And I mean, just the amount of time, like you said, in the transitions, I mean, if you look at the scores then as they are now, you can see those transitions have made a significant impact on the time of people that are winning these things. So
yeah. So thank you, triathletes, for showing us what it is to do whatever you're doing to the body. I don't get it, but then again, I'm not built for long enduring events.
Dude, I run a half marathon and feel like I'm going to die. Like, I can't imagine doing everything before, after, and then doubling my half, and being like, I feel great, so that's true. That is true. I mean, but here's the thing, Wendy, when you run a half marathon and I run a half marathon, I'm pretty much couch to half marathon. Me too.
I can lumber. You give me those 13 miles, I'll lumber through it, and I'll pay for it for the next week. But anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm not wearing a leotard for that, though.
Another thing is it brings us to our next topic that I was so kind of laughed about, but it is seriously a big thing, was the leg warmers. And, the leg warmers were kind of the big thing around 1983-ish when Flashdance came out. But the reason before then that people wore them, it was mainly dancers. And the reason they wore them was to keep their legs from cramping. So maybe these triathlon or Ironmans should have worn some leg warmers too, while they were running, versus now they have the compression socks, but maybe back in the day that could have helped them. But when you have to think about that, and you think of Flashdance, of course, course, everyone usually thinks about the iconic moves or whatever of Jessica Biel's. And so, she pretty much set the trend of these, leg warmers, as well as the, the leotards still. And, so we can't not mention the leg warmers. However, because we could be talking about this forever, and I know that this is going to go way probably longer than it should, we have to immediately go into the one and only Richard Simmons. So you got good old Richard Simmons with his unforgettable hair, his outfits. I mean, and of course, oh man, sweating to the oldies.
Yeah.
That was in 1988. So short shorts, his muscle top, his crazy hair, his headband, of course. We've got that.
Yeah. Now, did you ever in the 80s? Did you ever own a pair of those Dove shorts, or those short shorts with the
the
stripes or up the side?
No.
So you didn't.
The only time I ever wore shorts like that was when I ran track and we had to wear the track shorts, where I was still super uncomfortable in those. And I would kill to have that body, now. But then I was like, I do not feel comfortable wearing this. So for this man to get out there and have his high socks on, and, he's, bringing it back. And of course, 1988, that's still a long time ago, but to me, it still doesn't seem that long ago. And I know when we were talking and looking up Richard Simmons, I think you found that he's still doing the disco sweat. And I didn't even know he was still doing stuff.
Well, that was.
I guess it was 2002, right?
2002, yeah. So from 88 into the early 2000s. So, I mean, it's a good 14-year run. I mean, from a video standpoint, again, was it 2002? Were we DVDs at that time yet? Anyway, so he did a lot of home videos as well, because as you talk about sweating to the oldies or disco sweat, those were a series of videos for those videos that he did. So he was still doing a lot back then. But now that I'm talking to you, Wendy, when you think about the 70s and the 80s, that period of time, that 20 or so years, big changes, a lot of very iconic when you think about it. Because when you think about, we had, if you have theme parties, right? If you have a 70s party, an 80s party, what do you think? You're thinking disco, but a lot of times you brought up flash dance. I mean, someone's going to show up in a unitard with leg warmers and a headband, right?
And the cut-off sweatshirt.
And the cut-offs with a big neck. And I think Bridie Stratton, her and I, we kind of matched one where's that, the 80s? Some 80s theme party for one of our Optima conferences a few years ago. But that's the shirt that I didn't wear the unitard, but I wore the big with a big neck. And I even think like movies of the time, Valley Girl. You ever watch Valley Girl with it escapes me. But anyway, if you're watching this, look up Valley Girl, the 80s version. It was remade and done up again. But when they worked out, and even when they just walked in the mall, which is what you did a lot of in the 80s, right? Mall walking, you had, you weren't exercising, but you had some kind of headband on, or version of a headband, or you had some big baggy shirt. But when you think about the 70s and the 80s, I mean, those are some pretty impactful times. I mean, we're talking about, again, he said Jane Fonda, we're flash dance, and I'm bringing up Valley Girl from just a fashion every day on the street, what you wear. And then we're talking about, Richard Simmons in those shorts. I remember I had a pair, just one pair. I didn't wear that all the time, but I had a pair that I would wear, just down the way. I mean, they were so light, and
you were free.
I was free. And I also grew up in Southern California, so there it's
that's what says it.
Yeah, 75 degrees, 11 months out of the year which is why you can wear that and the tank top.
That's right. Well, and then you got to think too. I mean, when you go back and you start talking about people that were wearing the sweatshirts and that kind of stuff, you've got people like Cyndi Lauper and Madonna and all these, big popular singers too, that were wearing that in their videos. And again, they weren't working out, but they were just, that was the thing. And so big hair, cut off clothes, and They made quite the fashion statement, but it actually started again with some of these movies. And if you're wearing it in movies and you're doing certain things, and that's kind of what, like if you're a ballet dancer, you wanted to wear what the ballet people were doing that were the icons of the time. And so,
Right.
you know, again, these influencers really did kind of determine what was the right thing to wear depending on what they were doing it, you know.
Right.
But again, we could talk about the 80s forever. But if we were, you know, and another, you know, if we're still staying in the 80s, you know, just quickly, I want to, you know, say too, that that's kind of when we started to introduce fleece, was in the late 80s. And I think Patagonia was the
Yep.
first company that kind of introduced the outdoor wear, more of the fleece. You know, it's still, fleece is so common. I mean, I know I wear it because I'm always cold. But you know, now
Yeah.
there's a little bit more of the, what is it, the recycled polyester fibers, and you know, it's more biodegradable and stuff like that. Again, you know, very earthy. But we
Right.
have to, you know, thank pretty much Patagonia for introducing that. Because again, you know, we see that in so many of the fabrics when in the winter,
Yep.
especially in the winter type, you know,
Yep.
jackets and stuff, and sweatshirts. But did you know that, you know, now if we're moving into the 90s, so we think about, you know, 1994-ish time frame, and you think about hot exercise, it kind of brings you back into just the bike shorts. I mean, that's when they really became the thing. But instead of the bike
Yeah.
shorts and the fluffy tops and stuff, it was very fitted tank tops, you know, and the bicycle shorts. Again, now they're looking more for the aerodynamic and working out, and you know, and that kind of stuff. But that's when, you know, you started actually looking at competition, and they were getting fit for these particular events. And you know, that didn't happen until 94. So
Yep. So you kind of saw in the 90s a recycling of fashion from what we were seeing in the 70s. So things are starting to come back again, as far as the form fittedness, as well as, you know, like what we talked about with Arnold, just simple tank top and shorts. But now you saw the migration of materials and how they fit. So yeah, so form and function are just now they're really converging as far as, okay, what do I need to get out of this athletic wear for me to feel good and comfortable, but also still have the freedom to move.
yeah, well, and then at that time frame too, instead of it being like the muscle tanks that were, like you said, still flowy, but you could see things, they became not only tight fitting, but they actually started to become more crop tops. So you started to see
Right.
people's abs, and they were showing off their bodies and their physiques, and people were feeling more and more comfortable showing themselves off. Totally
Right.
different from like the Jane Fonda days and the unitard where everything was like that. It's like, okay, now we're thinking to no more flowiness. Now it's going to be that, you know, this is what I have. Like, what do you think?
Right.
Kind of thing. You know, whether that's a should do or should not do, that's totally up to you. But at the time, that's when that became the new thing. And then of course that would lead us into, you know, the early 2000s, and we cannot not talk about Under Armour and what they did. So, I mean, I'll let you seeing how football was your thing. So
yeah, well, you know, it's you know, when you talk about a company like Under Armour, it's one of those like kind of real grassroots growth for them, because they started off with young athletes, you know, from the high schools, and then as those high schoolers went into college, and then from college, of course, into the pros, that's where the reputation was starting to flourish into the performance side of things. And of course, when you have material like these materials that wick and take moisture away from your body, and they do it really well, of course, now you have something that's going to be very utilitarian as far as, okay, not only does it look good, but I don't have an hour's worth of sweat still sitting on me, right? And then of course, you know, so you have that moisture control fabric that, you know, they've been able to do. And of course, now you have materials, you know, whether it's, you know, Nike or Adidas or Reebok, to where you know, moisture and moisture control and wicking are a big part of it. But I'll say that you know, when it came to in my experience, who did it first and best was Under Armour. And of course, they were able to use that effectively when it came to performance tops, especially with football players, because now, you know, it's not just, you can't just wear that thick cotton or that cotton shirt underneath where it just holds on to all that sweat. I remember in high school, that's basically what we had. You had a t-shirt that you wore under your pads, and then you just be heavy and wet and cold, depending on practice. But once you were able to have a material that took moisture away from you, you don't feel as wet and heavy at the end of practice. They were able to do that really, really well, and that's where you've seen them propagate, especially over the last 10 plus years, as far as performance goes.
Oh yeah, thank goodness for dry fit. So.
Yeah, they did it well.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and again, when we're talking about early 2000s, of course, with me being the female here, I have to go ahead and start talking about the wonderful Lululemon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they kind of came into the market at that point, and I'm probably going to say this right, but I think it's the Gusset. Is that right? Or Gusset?
I'll say
Gusset.
If you want to be, if you want to have a little flair to it, Gusset. Gusset would probably be more the American way of saying that.
We've gone French, we've gone everywhere. So however you want to say it, but
Gilet.
Now we were talking about everything now going tighter, like the biking shorts and, things were, really, really tight.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, as a female, specifically, there was things that you always had to be careful about when you wore things really tight. And I'm just going to term it the female wedgie. And so with the introduction to this gusset or however you want to say it, they actually had this piece of like a triangle piece that actually went into their pants. And so it kept that female wedgie from showing. And so, that was an extreme breakthrough where you're like, heck yeah, like these pants are money. And so they are extremely expensive. So they are money for sure. However, they did serve, like, I think they served the world quite a service by coming up with that type of invention. But, and what I mean by that too, is that, they came out with the baggy, yoga pants, the free flowing pants were the big thing with the, of course, in the very beginning, they had the band at the top that was colorful. And then they had, they could reverse the pants. So you could change the color of the band and, and more people were wearing those daily because I think of how comfortable they actually were. And then how flattering they now were because of this new addition to these types of tight fitting clothing, especially in the pants. And so, but you got to think they were functional. They allowed, they really came into the market more for yoga. But we see where we go from then, which was early 2000s to where they are today. We can talk about now when you think of Lulu, you're thinking, the capris. Well, they came out with capris then too for the workout, and that's, that was like, oh wait, are they pants? Are they shorts? Nope, they're right in the middle, so they're perfect. You can wear them anytime, like So they came out with the flowy capris, and then now when you look at what they have on the market. And kind of where we were going with this entire podcast, it was more of like, look where we started, but now it's the athleisure wear. So this is stuff where people are wearing workout clothes, yoga pants. They term them yoga pants every day, whether they're going to the grocery store, whether they're sitting at home, whether they're going to the gym, and that's actually okay. And so, it just, they continue to grow in popularity, and they come in so many different colors, and just the fabric itself lasts a really long time. But because they're so comfortable and everyone just kind of lounges in them, that's like people's everyday wear. So,
exactly. Yeah, you'll see. You'll see people walking around in Lulu, and it's like, did they just work out, or are they going to a workout? It's like, no, they're just buying some apples and bananas and some milk at the grocery store. And I have friends like, it's just this athleisure. My wife, when I told her we were doing this topic, she's like, well, you know what? I've been athleisure since I was in high school. So you're not talking. So, but you got to be comfortable. And she likes to be comfortable apparently since high school. But, with my friends who I own I have an outfit, a tracksuit by Lulu. One of the most comfortable outfits I have is by Lululemon. So the price range is up there, but it was a really nice investment to make because you can work out in it and you can wear it out and about, or just, if it's cool like today, you want to sit in front of the TV, drink a nice hot tea and read a book. that's a great outfit to do it in. So, but that's all I can say about Lulu. Good.
Well, I
Looks
mean,
good.
as a female, again, the casual wear that they have, I mean, they've come out with it. And again, we don't get anything from Lulu for saying this, but they really do a good job with their shirts that have, built-in bras, and they've got tanks, and they've got sweatshirts, and they've got all different types of things, and they try to keep you in the the trend, if you will, with colors and the different crops and long pants and joggers and stuff like that. But that's where we are today. And I am so grateful for where we are today, because again, I wouldn't want to walk around or work out in a leotard. I really wouldn't want to be in a onesie. I don't want to wear biking shorts out in public unless I'm actually going to go ride a bike. And I still don't do that. So this has been fun, kind of a trip down memory lane, even before we were born, where we started to where we are.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, you have those timestamps, and nothing identifies a decade or an era better than fashion. And when we talk about fashion, you also have to talk about, or when we talk about exercise, you also have to talk about fashion and what people wore at certain times. Because, I mean, there's things that we didn't talk about, the big baggy bodybuilding pants that they used to wear
the
in the 80s, the Zubas. And there's a lot of stuff that we haven't talked about, but that's just how big fashion has been in fitness and movement. So this has been fun. I like this topic. I mean, not a whole lot to contribute, but the history of exercise and fashion or movement and fitness as it relates to what people wear has just been a really interesting topic to research over the time. So Wendy, thank you so much. I always love spending my time with you on these podcasts. So for you guys that are listening out there, thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed this topic, listening to it as much as we enjoyed talking about it. But if you like what we're talking about, then subscribe to Random Fit, and we hope to see you next time. So take care, everybody. We'll see you, Wendy.
Bye. Thank you.